morning, when Gregor Samsa woke from troubled dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into horrible vermin. He lay on his armor-like back, and if he lifted his head a little, he could see his brown belly. The bedding was hardly able to cover it, and seemed ready to slide off any moment.
Gregor.
Somebody called. It was his mother.
It's 6:45. Didn't you want to go somewhere?
Gregor, however, had no thought of opening the door and instead congratulated himself for his cautious habit acquired from his traveling of locking all doors at night, even when he was at home.
When Gregor was already sticking halfway out of bed, the new method was more of a game than an effort. All he had to do was rock back and forth. It occurred to him that how simple everything would be if somebody came to help him.
The chief clerk now raised his voice.
Mr. Samsa,
He called to him.
what's wrong? You barricade yourself in your room, give us no more than yes or no for an answer? You are causing serious and unnecessary concern to your parents, and you fail. I mentioned this to you, by the way. You fail to carry out your business duties in a way that is unique, unheard of.
The way she held her head suggested she wanted to see Gregor better, but the unthinking way she was hurrying backwards showed that she did not. She had forgotten the table was behind her with all the breakfast things on it. When she reached the table, she sat quickly down on it without knowing what she was doing, without even seeming to notice that the coffee pot had been knocking over and a gush of coffee was pouring down onto the carpet.
Gregor's father seized the chief clerk's stick in his right hand, picked up a large newspaper from the table with his left, and used them to drive Gregor back into his room, stamping his foot as he went.
One side of his body lifted itself. He lay at an angle in the doorway. One flank scraped the white door and was painfully injured, leaving a brown flake on it. Soon he was stuck fast and would not have been able to move at all by himself. The little legs along one side hung quivering in the air, while those on the side were pressed painfully against the other. Through the crack in the door, Gregor could see that the gas had been lit in the living room.
What a quiet life it is in the family lead.
Said Gregor to himself, and gazing into the darkness, felt a great pride that he was able to provide a life that is such a nice home for his sister and parents.
In order to test his taste, his sister brought him a whole selection of things, all spread out on an old newspaper. They were old, half-rotten vegetables, bones from evening meal covered in white sauce that had gone hard, a few raisins and almonds, some cheese that Gregor had declared inedible 2 days before, a dry roll, and some bread spread with butter and salt. She had poured some water into the dish and placed it beside them.
Hardly aware of what he was doing, other than a slight feeling of shame, he hurried under the couch. It pressed down on his back a little, and he was no longer able to lift his head, but nonetheless felt immediately at ease. His only regret was that his body was too broad to get it all underneath.
He hurried up onto the picture and pressed himself against its glass. It held him firmly and felt good against his hot belly. The picture, at least, now totally covered by Gregor, would certainly be taken by no one. He turned his head to face the door into the living room so that he could watch the woman walk in.
Oh God, oh God!
Arms outstretched, she fell onto the couch as if she had given up everything and stayed there immobile.
Gregor!
Shouted his sister, growling at him and shaking his fist. That was the first word she had spoken to him directly since his transformation.
Gregor drew his head back from the door and lifted it towards his father. Then, right beside him, lightly tossed, something flew down and rolled in front of him. It was an apple. Then another one immediately flew at him. Gregor froze in shock. There was no longer any point in running, as his father had decided to bombard him. Another one, however, immediately following it, hit squarely and lodged in his back. Gregor wanted to drag himself away, as if he could remove the surprising and incredible pain by changing his position, but he felt as if nailed to the spot and spread himself out, all his senses confused. No one dared to remove the apple lodged in Gregor's flesh, so it remained there as a visible reminder of his injury. Because of his injuries, Gregor had lost much of his ability, probably permanently.
These earnest gentlemen, all three of them had full beards, as Gregor leaned peering through the crack in the door one day, were painfully insistent on things being tidy.
His sister began to play. Father and mother paid close attention, one on each side, to the movements of her hands. Drawn in by her playing, Gregor had dared to come forward a little, and already had his head in the living room.
Mr. Samsa,
shouted the middle gentleman to Gregor's father, pointing without wasting any more words, with his forefinger at Gregor as he slowly moved forward. The middle of the three gentlemen shouted like thunder and stamped his foot and thereby brought Gregor's father to a halt.
I give immediate notice on my room. For the days that I have been living here, I will, of course, pay nothing at all. On the contrary, I will consider whether to proceed with some kind of action for damages from you. And believe me, it would be very easy to set out grounds for such an action.
Gregor had lain still where the three gentlemen first saw him. His disappointment at the failure of his plan, and perhaps also because he was weak from hunger, made it impossible for him to move. He was sure that everyone would turn on him at any moment, and he waited. He was not even startled out of this state when the violin on his mother's lap fell from her trembling fingers and landed loudly on the floor.
He could already feel the decayed apple in his back, or the inflamed area around it. Then, without his willing it, his head sank down completely, and his last breath flowed weakly from his nostrils.
Come and have a look at this. He's dead, just laying there, stone dead.
I think we should be recording this so we have bloopers.
Put little handles on the little dish thing. There you go. Oh, they look like boobies.
He'll be running away. You should like poke and go scoop, scoop, motherfucker.
Scoop, 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 motherfucker.
I spelled it wrong.
Dude, I wasn't recording.